So let's do one more really cool way to get data into SharePoint besides creating a custom list. I told you that a custom list was one of two ways to be able to do this sort of thing that we did with this inventory. If I have a list already sitting in Microsoft Excel, then it's not at all hard for me to take that list and to send it up to SharePoint. As a matter of fact, it's really pretty wicked easy to do, okay? So let's imagine that I have some other data that I want to keep track of. And it's just some call letters for different stations. We're out doing some surveys, and we want to make sure that we have information about different stations that are broadcasting in our area. And the call letters for this are so this is it. Very simple little table. We're actually going to create a whole bunch of this, okay? And what I want to be able to do is have different people enter information, and I want to pull it right back here to Microsoft Excel, maybe in a different whole workbook. Let me go ahead and do that. Let's create a new workbook and throw it in there. Okay? So these are going to be for my station call letters, okay? And this is my project. Station IDs and locations. I've got a nice little workbook. I want everybody to help me with it, so I'm going to send it out to SharePoint. More than that, I want everybody to have access to it, and I don't want to email it to them. I want to have a list that they can sort and filter and copy and do whatever else that they need to do with it. Maybe I have some other columns I'm going to add about, you know, who the person was who entered it, but I don't need to do that if it's going to SharePoint. SharePoint's going to track all of that for me. I don't need to know who entered it, when they did it, who modified it, or when they did it. That'll all be fixed for me. So the easiest way to do this, from my point of view, is to turn this into a table real quickly. And you want to know about the kinds of data that are supported, because Excel has a lot of data types. SharePoint really only has 6. SharePoint's external data types, things that it grabs going in that aren't created internally like a lookup to another field, but its 6 basic core data types are single line of text, multiple line of text, a number, which we can then format with or without decimals, currency, date, time, or a hyperlink. Now, if you have true-false information, you can store it as zeros and ones, and it'll be able to track that as well. So the fact that you don't hear true-false, or for those of you who do work in other kinds of programs, Boolean values, you can do that with number. So 6 basic data types. A little bit of text on a single line, multiple lines of text, normally rich text, numbers, currency, date, time, hyperlink. Okay? So I want to make sure that all of the information I have is one of those 6 things, because if not, SharePoint will guess what it is and will try to do something with it. So if I have some data that I'm not sure about, I might want to exclude it. But this looks good. Then most of the data you have in Microsoft Excel is going to go in pretty easily. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to format this as a table. I could care less about the word format here. This shouldn't be called format as table. This should say make table, because that's what we're doing. We're going to make this into a table right here. And the reason we're doing that then is that we get a table tool design tab that lets me summarize this with a pivot table. That's cool. But more importantly, export this to SharePoint. So I'm now going to export this table to the SharePoint list, and this is, again, on the Table Tools Design tab that I just got by making this into a table. It says, where do you want to publish this? Well, if I had been publishing to SharePoint previously to my site, it would already be here on this drop-down list, but it's not. So I want to go back to my site, not even in my inventory, but just to Ginny's site, my whole site right here. And this is really what I want. I want my URL, and I don't need where it says site pages, home, ASPX. I need it to end with Ginny Quarter site. It's asking me for a site. I'm going to select all of this right up to Ginny Quarter site and do Control-C to copy it to the clipboard. Okay, let's come back over here again and paste this in right there. Now, remember when we published from SharePoint down to Excel, it automatically created a connection so that I could refresh that information. If I want to do that here too, and I do, I want other people to add to this list in SharePoint, but I want to pull it back to Excel, I can click this checkbox right here to create a read-only connection. What this actually will do is it will convert this table to a query as soon as it creates the list. So this is going to look amazingly like the queries that I got on the other workbook that I created. So what's the name for this? This is Stations. Now remember, you're creating a URL here, so if it's Stations and Locations, that's fine, but I might want to just do a short name and go back and change it in the list settings when it's all done. Okay, and this is for broadcast stations that are being surveyed, Okay, next. So what SharePoint and Excel just did, they had this little conversation and said, okay, does that site exist? Yes. What data types should we convert this Excel data to when it gets to SharePoint? It said station ID is a number, which it is. The call letter, location, and state are all text. That works just fine. If we didn't want station ID stored as a number, the easiest thing to do would be to change one of them to something alphabetical, and it would treat them all as text then. Okay? And I'm going to go ahead and click Finish. Now, because I clicked that checkbox, okay, you'll notice that I just picked up those two extra columns that SharePoint's using so Excel can synchronize this data back to SharePoint and to Excel. It says it was published, and this is where I can see it. Cool. I'm going to click that link. And we're going to see the table that we created from Excel here in SharePoint. Now, it comes in a data sheet view, and this is intentional. This is part of the design, because they assume you left SharePoint, you're kind of going to like it looking like a table you left Excel, you'd like it to look the most like Excel it can. But you don't need to do that. We can actually switch it to a standard view, and we'll get this nice, beautiful table in a standard view with our station IDs and so on. If I want to modify this, I can add new items using the form, or I could just say that we have another station up here. We have station 7, and its call letters are WABJ, and it's in Cadillac. Notice I get nice little drop-downs, form fills just as I would if I were in Excel. So there's my new information that I've entered. I go back to Excel. I click Refresh. And now as different people enter the places that they're going to do the surveys, their stations and locations, all I have to do as the person collecting that information is come back into Excel and click Refresh. Data's being updated in SharePoint, but I have a personal copy of it here. And by the way, so does anybody else who wants it, right? Because any other user can do whatever analysis that they want to do on that information. They, too, can go to stations and locations, export it to Excel, and do whatever they would like to do with this information. So that's how we take data that's sitting in Microsoft Excel and make a list with it in SharePoint.